Hello everybody, welcome to Flying Adventures. I'm Mike Jones, a 30-year pilot with thousands of hours and over 40 different types of aircraft. My favorite ride is this Cessna Centurion. Over the past 20 years I've replaced the engine, added new avionics, new paint, new leather, more new avionics, tip tanks, and much, much more. She just may be the single most capable Centurion in the skies today. Given that, let's take a look at today's mission. We start in Stuart, Florida, and fly to Pinehurst, North Carolina. About 550 miles. That would take 10, maybe 12 hours by car. In this flight plan, first we go inland over the sugarcane fields before turning north. Then we fly almost to Orlando before coming back to the coastline. After Melbourne, we head out over the ocean for 45 minutes, coming ashore in Georgia, then South Carolina, and finally North Carolina. There's a beautiful high-pressure system over Kentucky. It's delivered blue skies and modest temperatures, but a 30-knot headwind on our nose. The flight plan's for 3 hours and 40 minutes. In the next 20 minutes of this video, we're going to fly the mission together, and because of the spectacular visibility, we'll get a bird's eye view of the scenery, geography, and the economy of southeastern USA. Are you ready? Let's get going. I'm going to skip the takeoff. You've seen lots of Cessnas hopping into the skies. But as soon as I get airborne, I punch into an overcast of early morning stratus. Talking to Palm Beach Approach, they vector me west as planned, and then we turn northward. As I approach Fort Pierce, the clouds break up a bit, and you can see the terrain below. Here's my panel. Front and center are the digital HIS and digital gyro, both from Garmin. Great technology. My airspeed's 140, my altitude's 7,000 feet, the altimeter 3017. I've leaned the engine to 18 gallons per hour. When the two yellow lights glow, that's efficiency, 8.3 miles per gallon. That's a lot of avgas, I guess, but I'm going 160 miles an hour, so I guess it works out okay. Florida is the land where you never get to keep that initial clearance they gave you. Today was no exception. I got 4 different reroutes on this flight. Now I'm on Tango 208. Headed for the Kennedy Space Center. Notice the yellow circles. They denote a restricted airspace going to be opening in a couple days. Notice also all the traffic around me. ADS-B is a terrific improvement in flight safety. Looking ahead, I catch a glimpse of Patrick Air Force Base. This is just south of the Kennedy Space Center, and it's the Air Force Base that supports the Kennedy Space Center. It also was the home of the I Dream of Jeannie TV show years and years ago. You can see the Space Center itself, the launch pads, the enormous space shuttle runway going left to right, and in the center there's a big white tower. That's the huge vehicle assembly building where space rockets are stacked before being transported to the launch pad. Here comes Titusville, and pretty soon after that the suburbs of South Daytona Beach. Through the clouds you can see the trucks and cars and traffic on Interstate 95. I always feel kind of bad when I'm in my airplane and I look down on traffic. You know, they're going 60 miles an hour and I'm going 160 miles an hour. They fight with traffic lights and road construction, and I just sail along sipping my coffee. So it puts things in perspective a little bit. And here's a sinkhole that is filled in with vegetation. Florida's full of sinkholes, all perfectly round. And a look to the east, there's the shoreline and the barrier island south of Daytona Beach. Let's check the gauges. 141 knots, 7,000 feet, altimeter 3024. We're just south of Daytona Beach. This is the Ponce de Leon Inlet. It allows boaters on the intercoastal waterway access to the Atlantic. The runway you see in the distance is the new Smyrna Beach Airport, Kilo Echo Victor Bravo. Coming up next is the most challenging part of this trip. 99 nautical miles over the ocean, single engine. I'm not real happy. There's the beach, so now I'm officially feet wet, as we used to say in the Air Force. I'm coming up on St. Augustine, and next will be Jacksonville. You can see the surf is pretty vigorous. There was a king tide today, and you can see the surf crashing on what is normally a much broader, wider, and flatter Daytona Beach. Let me take a second just to show you my route. Once offshore, I'm steering 003 degrees while the shoreline falls away to the west. Eventually, I'll be about 22 miles out to sea, far outside the gliding range of the Cessna at this altitude, which ForeFlight shows using the green circle around the airplane. I've had tip tanks added to the plane to extend my range to well over 6 hours, maybe even more, at cruising speeds. After an hour and a half in the air, I turn on the right pump to empty the right tip tank into the right main tank. This takes about 15 minutes. Sure enough, the right tip is now almost empty, the left main is almost full, so I turn off the pump. Back to flying. More water. Lots and lots of water, and not a boat or a cruise ship to be seen. Notice the green on the GPS map. That's supposed to be light rain, but I could see 50 miles inland and there wasn't a drop falling from the sky. Here's the turn at Starry coming up. Pretty exciting aerobatics, don't you think? Now I'm coming up on the low country of Georgia and eventually South Carolina. This area right along the Atlantic is an enormous wetland, vital for flood control, erosion prevention. It's great habitat for fish and waterfowl. To my eyes, it looks a little dreary, but it's vibrant and full of life. The coastline is periodically punctuated by pockets of development. Here's the first big one, Tybee Island. It is a Civil War fort, a historic lighthouse, wide sandy beaches. Behind it, there's a shipping channel that goes all the way into Savannah, Georgia, which is just visible in the distance. And here's Hilton Head Island, with the famous red and white lighthouse just barely visible in the distance. Check out all the golf courses and of course the Hilton Head Airport. At this point, I'm about 5 miles offshore, cruising up Victor 1 as I grab this video. I finally cross the shoreline near Beaufort, South Carolina, and get a good look at some of the more low country wetlands. They do go on for miles and miles. Notice inland, when the land becomes firm enough, the farms start, the roads, the towns, because they're all safely protected by the vast wetlands on the ocean. Time to refill the left main tank from the left tip tank. The red light means the pump is on. This is over Rock Creek, South Carolina. And this is the inlet where the Toogoo River dumps into the ocean by Camp St. Christopher. I'm not making it up, folks. Toogoo River. Check it out. Now we're approaching South Charleston, South Carolina, where you can see the airport right on my nose. Okay, the left tip tank is empty. I'm turning off the pump. About 63 gallons remaining. That's good for more than 3 hours in the air. All right, I've nailed the Charleston VOR, now turning left according to my flight plan and heading home. Notice my ground speed's picked up a little bit. The plane gains about 2 knots for every 100 pounds of fuel I burn off. Less weight, more speed. It's a good combination. Additionally, the farther north I go, the more the winds come from the east and aren't quite on my nose, so I pick up a few more knots from that too. Okay, coming up just a little left of my nose, that's Lake Moultrie, one of two giant man-made lakes just outside of Charleston here. They were created by building these huge dams that are right under my wing, and they're drained by this canal you're going to see coming up on the right in a second. Let's get a closer look. Now we're over more farmlands. Notice how this land, which is of course higher and drier than the terrain closer to the ocean, supports miles and miles of forests, and then miles and miles of more farmlands. And here's something you almost never see from the ground: a huge prison, frequently tucked into the woods, out of sight. This is the federal prison outside of Salter, South Carolina. Notice the double line of rectangular fencing. The parking and security areas are outside the fence. And from the air, you can see these all the time. Prisons are very distinctive from the air, easy to differentiate from schools, hospitals, colleges, and stuff like that. Now we're coming up on Williamsburg, South Carolina Regional Airport. This is a nice looking facility. I'll have to come back sometime and see what's going on. After that, it's just more miles and miles of farms. Did you know that agriculture is one of the biggest industries in the United States? Agricultural exports alone make up about 10% of all U.S. exports, totaling about $140 billion a year. And here's something you don't see every day: a giant Pac-Man cut out of the forest. I think somebody has too much time on their hands. And after that, another prison. I'm telling you, they're all over the countryside. Okay, we're coming up on Florence, South Carolina. I've been in the air about 3 hours. My ground speed's up to 152 knots. Some of that's from making the plane lighter by burning off fuel, but probably most of that is from the winds are abating as we move through the high pressure area. Look at all those runways at the Florence airport. Two big ones, and looks like three older, smaller ones. Looks like maybe several generations of construction and additions and enhancements. A golf course, a bunch of warehouses. Now this is interesting. Here's a meandering river cutting through the hillsides of South Carolina, but you can see to the left parentheses of trees nestled into each other, and that's where the river used to be. Over the border into North Carolina now, and the first thing you see are solar farms. This is a little one. North Carolina is leading the nation with huge solar farms. They contact the farmers. They say, hey, do you want to stand out in the sun and grow tobacco, or do you want to get paid every month by the electric utility? Farmers make more money with less work. It's a win-win for everybody. Coming up, Maxton Army Airfield. Here's something you don't see every day. This is restricted airspace up to 3,000 feet. It is the Army Center for their drone development work. There's 3 paved runways left over from World War II and 2 long dirt runways. This is because we're right next to Fort Bragg, the largest Army post in the world, and home to things like the American Special Forces, 82nd Airborne, and much, much more. Many mysterious things going on at Fort Bragg and at Maxton. Don't ask. It's just your tax dollars at work. Almost home, folks. Pinehurst is visible in the distance. I've begun a VFR descent. I canceled IFR, began a gentle descent. After Maxton, I'm down to about 2,000 feet, still cooking along at 145 knots. You cannot enter the pattern at 145 knots. Not a good decision. That's the commercial district of Pinehurst, where US 1 is joined by Route 15501. You can see Walmart. You can't see the signs, but let me tell you, it's Walmart, PetSmart, grocery stores, and all the other modern essentials. And here's the famous golf course, Mid-Pines. It's one of the 5 or 6 most famous Pinehurst courses. Here comes the Pinehurst Airport, Sierra Oscar Papa. It's got 6,000 feet of pristine concrete. I've been in the air 3 hours and 38 minutes. I've used about 66 gallons of gas, and I greased the landing. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Keep on flying, and we'll see you next week right here.